Hello and welcome to episode 51 of Retro Recall the PS1 Chronicles, a show where we play and rank every PlayStation game ever created. My name is Jimmy, and as always, I'm here with Mike.
Hello.
So the first episode of Season 2.
The very first episode, one whole season down, which is unbelievable.
50 games. Well, 50 episodes, I should say.
Yes.
But yeah, so today we have a game in a genre that you don't particularly like.
Yeah, you're not far off on that one.
I wouldn't say I love it. I mean, I love elements of it, and I definitely have played games that take influence from this stuff, but aren't necessarily exactly this. Like Isaac, Returnal, games like that I really like. But I wanted to try something different going with this new season. And instead of, us bullshitting about whatever's going on, maybe we have a question of the episode. Maybe something pertaining to the game, the genre, just something to get us started, get in the mood.
Series. Yeah.
Exactly. So my question for today is, you not being a fan, what would make you enjoy a shoot 'em up? Like, what needs to happen for you to have fun here?
So, I mean, I do have fun with them. Even with Einhander, this one, I do have fun. My biggest complaint with these is consistency. Whenever you're playing, I think it happened a lot in Einhander too, where you have, you can go behind the objects on this map, but if you touch these objects, you die. And there's never a clear rule of what you're allowed to and not allowed to go behind until you die. And you're like, oh yeah, can't touch that thing anymore. That, and then I complain about it a lot in Einhander, is just so much on the screen that you just lose track of where you are. Like, it just becomes overwhelming a lot. So, but I do understand that, especially for a bullet hell, that is the game, is a lot being on the screen. So maybe I would like a bullet heaven more.
You do know that's a genre, right?
Yeah. That's why I think all the ones I played as a kid, they were bullet heavens, of just like wanting to upgrade to the point where just nothing survives on the screen anymore is just so satisfying.
Well, the most recent bullet heaven that's like a big game is Vampire Survivors. I don't know if you've played that at all.
I keep hearing about that. I never got it though.
It is a game where pretty much constant waves of enemies are coming at you, and you keep just getting power-ups and power-ups until you're just destroying everything one hit. And
oh, wow.
It's also technically a roguelite where there's random power-ups, randomly generated things every time. It's on phones, and it's like $1 or something crazy. So, like, you should give it a shot. I think you would really like it.
Yeah, I'll definitely look into that. And so that's my biggest thing. Just make it more consistent and don't make things so hidden with projectiles.
Yeah, I can understand what you mean. I have tried to get into these kind of games for a very long time. I think my gateway into it was The Binding of Isaac, just because it has elements of that, but it's not that. Like, you still have the dodging, you still have the constant shit on the screen a lot of the time, especially some of the later bosses are crazy. But I think a lot of them are just too intense. Like, there's just, like you're saying, there's so much on the screen, it's so intimidating that the game wants you to learn every little thing about it. And games like that, for example, strategy games, all those kind of intense genres, for me, that's why I can't get into it, because there's so much to learn, so much to do, and I just don't have the patience. I want to have fun immediately.
I get that. But I mean, to go off of that, what you're saying with Binding of Isaac, from what I've seen of other people playing it, the projectiles are always like white, right?
No, but I mean,
oh, okay.
They're red sometimes. Your projectiles are always white until you get power-ups to change them. It's very much case-by-case basis, but
okay.
For the most part, until you get into some of the more crazier stuff going on, you can usually tell what's the enemy and what's yours. There's certain power-ups that make it harder to tell, but for the most part, you can.
And what I was going with that is with the color palette too. Your background is darker, like a brown. All the enemies are oddly colored too, so everything like stands out from one another. With Einhander, you had small projectiles that kind of matched in with the backgrounds. This being very colorful and bright, then you have these bright, colorful projectiles too. So things just get lost with the graphics. With Binding of Isaac, when you have that contrast in colors, I feel like I would complain less about that because, now I can see and I don't get so confused on what's what.
And to throw the other example I brought up in there, Returnal. I don't know if you know that game at all.
I've heard you talk about it, but I don't really know what it is.
So it is essentially like, what if you were playing The Binding of Isaac in 3D? I don't know if you ever played Risk of Rain or heard of that. It's kind of like that too.
Oh, okay. I've heard of that, yeah.
Where you're in a 3D space, but it's still a bullet hell game. I really liked it. It was an early PS5 game, and it was one of the first ones I bought because I just loved it. But I think another point that you brought up, which both of those games I listed don't have a problem with, is knowing what hurts you and what doesn't.
Yeah, I think Binding of Isaac is very clear on this is going to hurt you and this isn't.
There are some examples of it being kind of questionable, but for the most part, I think always knowing what is going to cause you damage is very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we were playing this game 2-player today, I mean, we're playing and I'm like, does this hurt you? And you're like, I don't know. So I just went into it and it killed us. So
yeah. And going back to even Namco Museum with Galaga, that is just, you're in space. So anything you see is something you need to either avoid or hit. It's very straightforward.
That's true. But yeah, I mean, I think I understand why you don't like these games. It's it's intense. It's even for me, if this game didn't have things to make it more accessible for you, I probably wouldn't like it as much as I do. And like we talked about in the episode, both me and Kyle used save states to beat Einhander because there was no other way we would have beat it.
Exactly.
So I think with that, we can hop into the game. Harmful Park was released on February 14th, 1997, only in Japan. We're playing a fan-translated version, which is awesome. It was developed and published by Sky Think System, which I am not familiar with.
Nope.
And it is a shoot 'em up. It's an example of the subgenre that a lot of people call cute 'em ups.
When I had to research and I saw that as the name of it, I just laughed because I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, well, you figure most shoot 'em ups are like serious and in space or, like about war or something. So, it being about a theme park where all of your weapons are candy or food, like definitely a stark difference.
Yes.
The last thing I wanted to say was this is a very, very rare game. Like extremely hard to find a physical copy, extremely expensive.
Oh, wow.
One of the most expensive on the PS1 just because it didn't have a lot of copies printed. So that's why it was kind of on my radar, I think, because I remember like seeing a list of like very collectible PS1 games at some point, and this was on there. And like, I've never heard of that. So it's kind of why I picked it. Also, we haven't played a shoot 'em up in a while, I think since Einhander, right? So
yeah, that was the one and only one we've ever done.
I think going into season 2, we're kind of just like covering genres we covered last year again that we haven't, or covering a lot of new genres. So that's kind of my thought process in picking this.
Yeah. Trying to cover things that, one that we haven't done in a long time, but also new ones that we haven't done. I know for our list this year, we're going to have a lot more categories that we never even touched last year.
Yeah, we're working with a new style of schedule where, we're taking turns picking new genres, big games, just making sure there's more variety. We're not playing a bunch of platformers back to back or something.
To be fair, that is the majority of the games is the platformers. So
I know it's going to be hard. And even for next October, when we're doing horror month, I feel like we got to find a way to not just play 3 survival horror games or something.
Yeah, I'm excited for that though. I'm looking forward to that.
I will say I've already started working on the list, but we will talk about that in 6 months.
Yes. So jumping into this, what did you think about this beginning cutscene?
So I think it's all right. I was definitely a little impressed with the amount of story in this game because it doesn't really need it.
Yeah.
But the voice acting is pretty like not rough, but like ear piercing.
I think that's yeah, it's just your standard like anime women yelling, more or less.
Yeah. But I'm talking about like the way it was edited, like the volume and like the
Oh,
distortion on it is so loud.
yeah, it is. But I mean, I'm on the same page as you. I didn't expect that much story into it, and the fact that it plays out like an anime, uh, and just they really go in depth with the detail of what the story is, who these people are, and why is it important.
Yeah, just watching it, I was like, damn, I did not expect like this long of a cutscene. Like, because there's the little cutscenes in between the levels. I was expecting
Mhm.
something more along those lines for the beginning as well, just like a quick setup, because that's what most of these games have. It's like, you are on this planet, you are doing this, and then you play. In this,
Yep.
it's like giving you this whole thing, and I really like that.
And not even that, like they could just have said, okay, here's the bad guy. And then you cut to the women and there's like, okay, they need to go fight. But no, then they introduce the mom and it's like, oh, I have this invention. And they're building this whole world around this. And I absolutely loved it.
Would watch an anime based on this 100%.
Oh, yes, yes.
But yeah, I mean, I thought all that stuff was great. I think this game, just in general, has a lot of personality, which for this kind of game is needed.
Yes. Being that Einhander was our first really shoot 'em up that we've ever done, the stark contrast between the two games of this being so bright and bubbly and happy compared to the other one, I fell in love instantly with this game.
Yeah, I mean, my thing with Einhander was I loved the atmosphere, the
Yeah.
music, the general vibe, that futuristic PS1 kind of vibe. Whereas, like, this one has its own vibe for sure. It's not typically what I would gravitate towards. It's not very, like, overly serious. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and going back to what you were saying about the in between cutscenes, I just love they could have done anything really, and I just love how they just have these little moments to build up the next theme for the next level.
Hmm.
It's like it's not a very like important cutscene, but it's like, oh, okay, we're doing something with the jungle because now there's a monkey involved. It's just pretty much a seamless transition between each one and why we're going to this new world.
Yeah, they're like, oh, we're going to the horror place now. That's up next. And it's like, oh, okay. But I think the theme park setting is very good for this kind of game because it gives you the opportunity to do whatever you want and it feel like it makes sense.
Yeah. And it's like the levels don't need an explanation. Like if you went to the next one is a haunted house, okay, we're at a haunted house now. But the fact that they provide that explanation
Yeah.
is just like the icing on top.
Just in general, I love this whole idea of, theme park being taken over by a bunch of evil like robots and stuff. And it makes sense why it's so bubbly because you're in a theme park. It's supposed to be like that. So everything in this game works together to create like the vibe that they want, which I really enjoy that.
Yeah, same. And so I guess going off of the cutscenes and all the story and stuff, what was your impression with the graphics?
I think they are really good. Like the pixel art is not the most detailed we've ever seen or anything, but
No.
I still think it looks really good for what it is.
My biggest complaint, I love the backgrounds, I love the enemies, I love everything happening. Our character is the most non-detailed thing on the screen, and I don't like that.
Yeah, I can see what you mean. It's almost like the focus is not on you, it's on everything else. But like even if you look at the screen at any time, like what we're looking at now, where you see the background and then you see the character, it is just such a clear difference to even the background, not even talking about the other like enemies on screen.
Exactly. It just feels like they put so much effort into everything else except for the character.
I wonder if they did that so that the character could be really small and you not have to like see it as much, if that makes sense.
It could be like, and it goes back to what you were saying of the focus isn't on the character. I do agree with that. It's just you're focusing on the bullets coming at you and dodging. You're not focusing on what your character looks like. And it wasn't honestly until we like watching this back that I noticed how low detailed the character actually was.
What I was going to say was it feels like, when you're playing the game, you're not looking at your character ever.
No,
And
not at all.
we're only noticing these things when looking at the footage while we're doing this right now.
Yeah.
For me, it's kind of hard to have that as like a quote unquote knock against it, just because like when you're playing it, you're not even thinking about that. You're worried about the million things on the screen.
Yes, exactly. It's just one of those things of I get it. It's just a little tiny little knock. Just now watching it back.
Just a small, tiny little knock. But yeah, I really like the music in this game as well. I don't think it's amazing. It's no Einhander, but I did enjoy it.
Yes. And I know we're going to compare it a lot to Einhander because it's the only two we've played, but I feel like it's just two different games. With Einhander, you have the futuristic robot technology, like electronic house music, which is standard with most of these games, I feel like. I like this because it goes out of the normal, and you have that one song. I don't even know what level it was, but there's like a lady singing in the background.
That's during the boss fight where you fight that lady at the movie theater.
Oh, okay. So when that came on, that's what grabbed my attention first. I'm like, wait, there's actually singing with these songs? That's incredible. I will admit, I went back and listened to the OST, and there's some songs that are just generic playing. They don't really add much. And I think the overall vibe is just, let's just match whatever's happening on screen. But there are some really good songs in this, and I really liked it.
For me, I just wouldn't like listen to this on my own, really. There's not like a lot of memorable melodies. Like it all makes sense for what it is, for sure. And it definitely completes the entire vibe. But I definitely wouldn't put this on like I would, another soundtrack. Like this would not be in the discussion from our awards best soundtrack. This absolutely would not be.
No. It works really, really well with the theme they're going for, but alone, it's with how many like dud tracks there are, it kind of ruins it. And it's like, okay, I wouldn't listen to this whole thing on my own. But there are a lot of standouts that I really, really like.
Yeah. No, I mean, if the music is the weakest part, looks like we're in for a good game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so jumping into the actual game now.
Yeah.
How long did you play?
About an hour and 20 minutes. A lot of that, honestly, a good portion of that time was spent on the last level.
I played about 50 something minutes, and then obviously, we played 2-player today and the mini games. So I think that was probably another hour.
Yeah. So about 2 hours ish.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's honestly, I don't know if this is a negative or not. Maybe this is where you can jump in on it. But the fact that you can go from level 1 to 5 in seemingly what feels like 20 minutes doesn't feel great. It's like too short.
I find it so hard to criticize this kind of game for that, though, because would you want it to be long? I don't know that I would.
Yeah. Even Einhander was a short game if you could actually make it that far. It's just, I don't know. I don't know if my expectation of it is just like, oh, I wish there was more. So I wish there was just more to the levels. But at the same time, of like, how much more could you drag this out of each level? It's that balance.
I think the level length for all of these is perfect. But I think maybe it could have had another 2 or 3 levels. And then after that, it would have been overkill. But like a few more, I don't think would have hurt the game at all.
Yeah. I guess. It's just, it was one of those things of whenever I got to level 6, I'm like, oh, cool, I'm making good progress. But then I get to the boss, I'm like, I feel like this is the end. Like once I beat this, I'm done. So it was just very confusing to me of how it could be so short. But also, I think Little Ralph was short too, right?
I don't remember. I don't think it was as short as this, but it definitely wasn't. Yeah. But I just mean like Einhander was longer than this for sure.
Yes.
But overall, I just don't think this kind of game can sustain itself for like what most other games would. Like if you were playing this shit for 3 hours, you'd be having a bad time, I think.
I think the game would have to be a bit more polished for it to be withstand 3 hours of a gameplay.
Yes, but I just think that this concept coming from arcades, obviously, it's
Yeah.
built around you playing it over and over again. That's why there's what, 4 difficulty modes?
Yes.
Easy,
Yes.
normal, hard, very hard. And
Yes.
there's that replay value. There's the mini games. There's playing it with a friend. There's a lot of replay value here. So even if you beat it in an hour on easy mode yourself, which is what we played on,
Yep.
honestly, us playing together, I feel like we could have got a couple more hours of enjoyment out of it before never playing it again. But
Mhm. Honestly, like I think we could have gone and beat the entire game on very hard if we really put the hours into it. It's a fun game. There's not really much difficulty. It's just like any other shoot 'em up where you just hold the shoot button and go.
well, all I was getting at with that was just that I wasn't sick of it. I just, we had to
No.
record the show. So
Yeah, even with the mini games, I feel like we could have played that a little bit longer because I was like, and I feel like a lot of it was the competitive nature of it. It's just like,
Mhm.
I need to beat Jimmy on this, but yeah, we had to just keep moving forward.
yeah, I mean, maybe next time we can allot a little more time for that. But we played for over an hour, so
Yeah.
But yeah, so to get back in the actual game now. So obviously this is a shoot 'em up. There's
Mhm.
4 different weapons you can switch to at any time.
Absolutely love.
Yeah, you can use the face buttons to switch between like a rotating order, or you can use the triggers and switch to anyone at any time. I, had a you moment and didn't realize you could do that with the triggers until at least halfway through my first playthrough.
Oh, okay. The only reason I knew was because I went to the controls options immediately upon starting the game.
I swear that I did that, but I probably just wasn't paying attention because I just wanted to get into the game, my impatient nature.
Yes. But honestly, it was very confusing as well because looking at the options, it says for potato, push L1. For jelly, push L2. I'm like, what the hell does that even mean? I don't understand. So whenever I jumped into the game, I did what you did. I was using X and circle to swap between my weapons. And then I happened to just look up at the score and I noticed it said potato. And I'm like, oh, this is the thing they talked about. That's the gun name.
I understand some of them, but why is it potato? Just because of that? That's what the super is.
I think so. I literally think it's whatever the super is, that's what the name of the gun is.
Little strange because you're looking at a hand the whole time, but that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, it does make it memorable. Like, you don't have to question what the super is. You just know.
Yeah, so each weapon has a super, by the way, which is based on a food item. My favorite weapon was the laser beam, which is, I don't remember what food item that is, but is that ice cream?
I think it's just ice.
Oh,
I just saw
yeah.
it pop up in the gameplay.
Yeah.
Okay. I never touched that one, honestly.
I mean, you saw when we were playing together, I used it almost the whole time.
Yes.
Mostly because the super is amazing. It's probably the best super out of all of them.
I agree. My two was I always used potato, which is your standard starting gun, and then the homing one, which was jelly.
I also used both of those as well. Never used the pie ever, only to test it. But I don't really like the potato super. It's kind of like whatever.
Yeah, it much like with the ice super, it's one of those things that if there's a ton of people on the screen, you just pop the potato, take out everyone in one go, and then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. So each weapon has 4 levels, which you get by collecting the power up. And unless you get good, you're not going to have it for long. So,
well, that's not true. So one thing I love about this game is, yeah, you can have a level 4 ice like you were using all the time. But if you die, you go back to level 1. However, you only go back to level 1 on the weapon you were holding when you died. So if you're using ice and you're like, oh, this bullet's about to hit me, if you're quick enough, you can switch to the main potato gun. And then if it's already at level 1, you're not losing anything, and your other guns stay where they're supposed to be.
I like that idea a lot, but you told me that right before we started playing, and I never did it once because in the heat of the moment, you're not thinking about that.
And you're panicking and you're like, oh, what do I do? How do I, am I going to make this? There were times when I would just instinctively switch weapons if a ton of people got on the screen because I was afraid I was going to get hit. So it's just a more safety for me to not lose my levels.
Yeah, it's like using a worse weapon just so you don't lose your good one, but then you never actually use your good one.
Exactly. And I hate to admit this, but it took me up until the very final level to remember that there were supers. So I beat all the stages, never touching it at all.
That's just crazy to me because sometimes you need it.
That probably explains why I died a good amount of times, because I'm like, how do they expect you to do this? Get to the stage 6, and I was like, oh yeah, there's a thing for supers, and I keep collecting them. What's that button? Haven't hit triangle. I'm like, oh, this would have been great. So many levels back.
Well, speaking of you dying, you also get unlimited continues, which is amazing.
It is, but it also goes with like no checkpoints. So it's one of those things of, especially in the last one, you're at the final boss and you die. Now you got to start the whole level over again. But it's not unfair to the point where you got to start the whole game over.
I think that is a fair balance to, be able to continue as many times as you want. And whenever you beat it, at the end when you put your score in, it shows how many continues you use too.
Oh, yeah. So it's kind of like, oh, you got the better score, but now can you do it with less continues?
I think that's the way any of these games should handle this, because that way a normal human being can play this game. Even on very hard, you could just tank your way through the whole thing. But if someone who wants to be insane and be perfect, they can do that, and it'll show on the score screen that you are a psycho.
Yeah. I love when games allow you to just make personal goals for yourself of how you want to play the game.
Yeah, and even more importantly, just play the way you want to play.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to use save states or some random program to do it. You could just do it all in the game.
I agree. Well, I guess with that, like, how do you feel about all the enemies on the screen? Or I guess the better way to put this is, how did you feel about the different sections of each level?
Well, I mean, they're all pretty much the same. They have the standard enemies. Then each level introduces the enemies are different for each stage. I shouldn't say it that way, but they have the standard couple shot kill enemies. Then there's the slightly more powerful ones. Then there's the almost mini boss like ones that take a while to kill.
Yep.
And then you have the final boss at the end of each level. So I found that, especially when we played on normal, the mini boss type characters were very tanky, maybe a little too much.
Yeah, especially for normal.
Like if we're playing on very hard, I totally get it. But I don't know. I think all the characters have a lot of personality, like all the enemies, I mean. And, even when you're killing them, they're still doing little things, and there's so much detail in all this.
They do reuse some enemies here and there, but it's not, I think they do at least.
Yeah, they do.
It's not overly done. They try to make the levels as unique as possible, which I love. My biggest complaint was, not complaint, but it's just you have these sections where you're okay, we're going through, we're killing all these enemies, it's going nice. Then all of a sudden it's just everyone on screen at once. And you're I can't go anywhere. I can't move. Everything is flooded. I get they're trying to ramp up the levels by oh, we're starting easy and we're kind of getting you into that. I just feel a better balance of phasing in and out of those difficult moments would have been really nice.
Yeah, I hear you. It's 0 to 10 immediately sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially in the last 3 levels.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, overall on easy and even normal to an extent, this game is not that hard.
No. It also too is as you play more and more, you start learning more and more. Mm-hmm. So when you and I were doing the 2-player, I learned that when you use the jelly shield, you can actually kill enemies with that. And it might have been something I was doing on my own without ever realizing I was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But actually watching it happen, I'm oh, okay, I now know how to utilize this special a lot more than what I was using it for.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also, you just learn the patterns. I mean, that's what these kind of games are about, is learning the patterns of the enemies so that you can play it perfectly. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And I do like how they have the balance of, it's not just enemies coming at you from the right. There's so many times that enemies will just casually come in from the left, and you're like, oh, well, now I gotta deal with this too. I think Einhander did the same thing, but not as much.
I don't remember it being as prevalent as this, where
No.
you finally get a grasp on what's happening on the right, and then all of a sudden, some guys just start coming in from the left.
It's a great way to like just change it up on you, and you're like, well, now I'm screwed.
Overall, though, like I said, this game is not that hard. So, especially with the continues, you can kind of just force your way through it if you want. But yeah, I mean, what did you think about the bosses?
I love how they were all unique. Every single level. The first boss, whenever you get up to it, and it's just that inflatable. What is it? A dinosaur?
Yeah.
Whenever I got to, I'm like, this can't be the boss, right? Because they're just literally inflating the boss in front of me. And I loved the uniqueness of that. The fact that every single boss is, I mean, it all comes down to the same thing. Just shoot them a bunch of times, but
yeah,
they're so creative with what they are. I love it.
You never knew what was coming up next. I love that.
And none of them were too difficult either. I felt like the levels were harder than the bosses more times than not.
I agree with that. And you can just blast your super over and over again if you save it and then just beat the boss really quick.
Yep. And I feel like that's why they throw in those sections of the levels to just overwhelm you. So you panic, use your super, and then it makes it harder for when you get to the boss.
Mm-hmm. When we got to the final boss, I was just like, that's it? Like, I was expecting like multiple phases. Like, I don't know. I think I'm just conditioned to think that way with final bosses in general in games. Like, they got to go all in. But with this game, it's just another boss, which to me is a little bit of a knock, honestly.
You feel that way because it's just the standard of bosses. And anytime it's just a single hit boss or a single stage boss, you're like, but it's the final boss. It's supposed to be more than that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the finale, right? And I don't know if this game has a true final boss or if like there's a second ending or something, because the ending is like not really good.
No, it's kind of just over and you're done.
I wonder if you have to beat it on very hard to get the true ending or something. I didn't look that up.
That's a good point. Because especially they start so strong with the story, to end it the way they do, I feel like there should be more cutscenes to show you the ending.
Yeah, I mean, there are cutscenes at the end. It's just not as in depth as the beginning.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a weird way to start so strong but not end as strong, which makes me think that there might be more that we're missing.
Yeah, I go back and forth on when we do this show if we should look up like other stuff like that we didn't experience, but then I'm like, well, we didn't experience this show. Should we take it into account? That's why, like, we were doing Crash 2, and you were like, so what happens if you get 100% because you did it? And I'm like, I don't remember. I didn't do it this time. But then I think back, when we did Crash 1, I put in a cheat, and then I got to see the final ending. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Was that a bad move? I don't think I should do that, right?
Yeah, but then again, we do go and look up other people playing the game just to see, oh, we couldn't do that. And we do look up, I guess, not walkthroughs, but we look up information about it. And that's how we learn about a lot of things going into an episode of like, oh, I didn't know you could do this.
That's true. No, I hear you. I'm just trying to think of like, is this show about specifically what we experienced, or is it about the game as a whole? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I want to say it's about 90% what we experience and 10% the game as the whole. Because with a situation like this, like if there's an alternate ending where you have to do specific stuff, obviously we would never get to that, so we wouldn't know about it. But to know that the possibility is there kind of would help it a little bit, I think.
I agree with you. I'm trying to look up right now as we're going to see if there is something, but without just bringing up a full playthrough, I don't see anything.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I watched a long play of this as well, and it was just the standard, hey, you finished the boss and you're done.
Yeah. I mean, as we'll get into later when I read these reviews, there's just not a lot of information on this game, not a lot out there, so just something to consider. Maybe we're idiots. Who knows?
Did you have a favorite boss?
Not really. I mean, I just kind of use the super on them over and over again, so I didn't really experience their full like move set or anything. But
Hmm.
the first one stands out the most, but it's just because that's the first one, I think. And like, by that point, I know how to play this game, so I'm just blasting my way through it and not really like paying too much mind to it.
Yeah. I think for me, it's that girl in the movie theater one. I just for some reason that was like a really cool with how much stuff is moving around and all these things you got to dodge, plus the screens in the background showing like a movie I think is going on. It's like so much detail with that and the music. I absolutely loved.
Yeah, that one's cool too. And I also love the one where you're fighting like a king, and when you beat him, all his clothes come off.
Just naked out of nowhere. It's like, what is going on?
But they're all great. They're all great bosses, in my opinion.
Yeah. Nothing lacks at all.
No. But yeah, so this game also has other game modes. And just really quick, I tried the score attack mode, and you'll see the length of my video file is literally 2 minutes long because it is so fucking hard.
So what is it? Because I completely forgot to play that one.
It's just a new level, and it's just really hard. And I think you're just trying to get the best score you can. I couldn't even beat it. I got like to the same part 3 or 4 times, and then I'm like, you know what?
I might have to check this out after we're done because I'm curious on what that looks like.
After us trying very hard mode, it feels like that is the equivalent of very hard.
Oh, okay.
There's just so much on the screen, so much going on. It's really hard.
Well, I guess, yeah, I'll watch your footage too for the edit. So,
But more interestingly, there is mini games,
yep.
which we played together today. And I think they genuinely add a good bit to this game. It's something for you to do with your friend, and they're actually very fun.
Extremely fun. So the first one is Punch Ball, which is just Pong. I don't know, but there's a weird twist to it. It's not just Pong, and there's more tactics to go into it. Strategy.
Yeah, you have 2 hands. You can hit with both of them at once. You can hit with one or the other, or you could smack it up into the air. Then on top of that, you get a super, which I utilized against you multiple times. And there's also different maps. There's 4 different maps with different little gimmicks. So like you could get a few hours of fun out of that, I think.
Oh, 100%. And just like if you have that one friend who's just very competitive and is like, but he's only good at this one map. And so you have to like practice. And I loved it. There's so much to it. Just taking a classic game and turning it on its head and adding so much more to it is nice.
The only downside is that you cannot play against the computer in that one. You have to play against another person.
Yeah.
Which I guess they just didn't want to make like AI for that to go against you.
It's a weird decision. I don't get why you wouldn't, but or at least show you like, oh, this is a 1 player or a 2 player only thing on the main screen.
Yeah.
Because you and I both went into it as 1 player and I just messed around with the controls a bit. I'm like, okay, well, I can't actually play this game.
Yeah, I messed around with it for a minute and I'm like, all right, but I get what this is. It's fucking Pong. So
yeah.
But yeah, I genuinely liked that one. And then the next one is what is it called? Sky Circuit.
Yep.
And it's like a race. It kind of reminds me of the 2-player mode in like the old Sonic games.
Oh, that's a great way to describe it. Because I'm like, I know I felt like this looks familiar and feels familiar. So that's spot on.
Now, to be fair, it's not as squished as the Sonic games were. I don't know if you remember that.
No, I don't.
So it would be 2 full-size screens, one on top, one below, but they're super squished. So it's like you can't really tell what's going on. It feels like claustrophobic in a way.
I do not remember that at all.
But you're essentially doing the same thing as like racing, I think. I mean, I don't remember it super well, but
yep. And I mean, there's just power-ups, and I feel like the maps are almost kind of the same. It's just your tunnel goes down, your tunnel goes up. Now you have sharp corners and just whoever can reach the finish line. But I think out of the 3, I feel like this is the weakest minigame.
But it's still not bad, I think. I think it's still fun. No.
Yeah, still fun, but just at the bottom of the fun.
Yeah. I mean, there's just not much to it with both. Like, you're both on the screen. I kind of wish that maybe you could hit into each other. Maybe there was power-ups like little rockets or something just to like screw your friend over.
Yeah, if you have weapons in the main game, it would be cool to have some type of weapon system in these little mini game too.
Yeah, I mean, it would just make it a little more chaotic, a little more fun, but it probably would be annoying. So either way, I mean, like you said, it's the weakest, but it's still cool. And I mean, there's also like 8 levels, I think, or something.
That sounds right. Yeah. So again, variety. You don't have to get bored of just one level over and over again.
I just want to say that they went all in on these mini games. Like each one of them has like at least 3 or 4 maps. There's just so much going on. And it's like, this is a thing you find in the options menu. It's not even on the main menu, which is crazy.
Weird too. Imagine like if you had this game and you just kept playing the main game, not realizing that mini games existed.
I mean, as a kid, I wouldn't go mess around with the options menu.
No.
So I might
So
never
it's-
known.
And then the third one, which personally my favorite, was Tank Battle. I mean, the name just tells you what it is. Your tanks that battle, but
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you shoot these skinny lines and they can like bounce off the walls, and that's where it gets crazy. I mean, we played 1v1 and it was chaotic enough in itself, but I played against the computers and I just got my ass handed to me.
it is weird controls. I had to explain to you how the controls work.
Yeah.
Because when I first played against computers, they destroyed me as well. It took a little bit to understand how you actually shoot and aim. But just, I don't know, just having to, there's parts where I'm in the corner, just dodging like, as if my life depended on it in the corner. Because all the computers were just aiming at me. I'm like, go away, fight each other. I'm trying to get out of here.
They're all ganging up on you. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then just like the other two, like just something that if you put the time into, you can master it and be really, really good at this one specific mini game.
I just can't think of another game like this, or even just in general, where the mini games to me add so much to it.
Yeah, almost as if just it's just kind of like a DLC to the game. You're like, you have this amazing base game, and now here's all these amazing mini games to play with your friends too. Like Bomberman tries to do that, and I guess they do succeed in a way, but I feel like this is so much better and just more to it than what Bomberman had.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of like Super Monkey Ball, which has way more stuff in it, but like eventually you end up just playing the mini games. You know what I mean? Like the golf and the monkey target and stuff. Like, and that's kind of what I feel like this is. Like you would get bored of this and then get your friends and, you know, just keep doing runs of the tank battle or something and talking shit to each other, you know?
100%. Yeah. I never played Super Monkey Balls. I don't know all about that, but
You know, there's the main Super Monkey Ball like gameplay, but there's also a bunch of mini games and there's like bowling and stuff. It's so fun. But yeah, I mean, that pretty much brings us to the end of the discussion here. I don't really have much more to say about the game. We've kind of talked about it in detail, compared it to Einhander a bunch, which is one of the things I wanted to do just because it was the other one that we played. And
Yep.
I'm ready to get into some reviews if you are.
Yeah, I don't think there's much to my notes that we haven't covered already naturally. So
The game kind of went relatively unnoticed at the time. I could not find a single review from the time of release, not even from Famitsu, which does like all the Japanese games, which is crazy.
wow.
In fact, on Moby Games, there was only 2 reviews, period. And they were both from like, I think 2007 or something when the game came out on the Japanese PSN.
That's crazy.
So for the first one, I just have, and by the way, I've never heard of either of these sites, so sorry, but
If there's no logo for the review thing, that's because I just literally could not find anything.
yeah. Games Collection gave the game a 9 out of 10, and there's no review. It just says that they called it a rare and refined aesthetic masterpiece, which I do agree with.
Yeah. Compared to all the other shoot 'em ups, I love this aesthetic of this game.
And Quebec Gamers, which is kind of funny, but they gave it an 8.2 out of 10. And they said, I didn't find any real flaw in this game apart from its short lifespan, but if I had to bring one, I would say that the automatic scrolling is a bit slow. Some will criticize its slowness and simplicity a bit, but I found that the game recovered well visually. Despite its slowness, on the other hand, it gives us time to admire the magnificent settings.
Yeah. I forgot to bring that part up. The scrolling, yeah, it was slow, but I understand it for what the pace of the game is in general. I couldn't imagine this game if you had if you're flying across the screen really fast.
If this was as fast as Einhander, it would be out of control.
Yeah. It'd just be chaos. Like more chaos than what it already is.
Honestly, like I didn't really notice the slowness at all. Like it's not really something that was on my radar until I read that.
No, I kind of noticed. It goes back to the parts I was talking about with when there's not too many enemies on the screen and they kind of like are slowly feeding them in. That's when I noticed it was kind of moving slow, like you're on a roller coaster waiting to get to the fun parts.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not something that like takes me out of it. I'm not gonna like give it a bad score because of that.
Yeah, and plus it's like, it's like the calm before the storm almost,
Yeah. And like we said, if you had that many enemies on the screen with that many projectiles and it was going fast, this would be impossible to play.
I agree. But yeah, that brings us to our scores. So I can go first this time.
All right.
I literally just go first whenever I know what my score is, and I let you go first when I don't. That's pretty much all it is. Just because like I'm afraid I'm going to say a high number or like too low, and you're going to be like, what the fuck? Even though you'd say that every time anyway.
I'm trying to get better at not saying that.
All right. Well, I think for a shoot 'em up, this is probably close to the top. I mean, there could be a little bit more to it, but what would I add to it? The mini games are awesome. It's a great full package. It's still short, but there is a lot of replay value. I'm questioning my score as I'm talking, but I definitely think this is better than Einhander.
Yes.
So I think I'm going to go with an 8.
Nice. I was hoping you were going to be as high as I was.
Well, what I was debating internally as I was talking was, am I like not high enough? But I don't know. Well, I'm going to see what you say first.
No, I have nothing more to add than what you already said. This is a great game. I hated Einhander because of the difficulty, but I feel like I could have overcame that. This was equally as difficult sometimes as Einhander, but just the improvements that they made over top of Einhander, of just being able to swap all your weapons all the time whenever you wanted. Great. I love that. I was going with an 8.5.
That's where I was, either 8 or 8.5.
And I was like, even during the conversation and whenever I finalized my score last night, I'm like, is this too high? Is Jimmy going to go a little bit lower? Like, I don't know.
I think I'm going to stick with an 8 just because, I don't know, music for me is an important one with this game. And the music is not amazing. And if it was, it would have raised it at least a 0.5 for me. I don't know that I ever could have went with a 9 for this, but I could have seen myself going to 8.5. Before we played it together, the score I had written down was a 7.
Oh, wow.
Because like I liked it, but like it wasn't anything amazing. But then we started playing it and I'm like, this is really fun. Then we played the mini games and I'm like, all right, this is a good ass game.
Yeah, I will say playing it on normal and even on extra hard with 2-player, it just, even though we didn't make it very far with the extra hard, it just had that extra level of fun. Like 2 people with, especially if we both had upgraded weapons all the way, like just annihilating everyone on the screen would have been so nice. Yeah, so that's going to give us an 8.25. We only have one tie, and that is Tony Hawk 2.
This has to go under Tony Hawk 2, right?
Yeah. I was thinking about it. I'm like, is this better? And I don't, as much as we said Tony Hawk 2 wasn't as good as Tony Hawk 1, I still think it's better than this.
It's still an amazing game. Like,
yeah. All right. So that's going to put Harmful Park at number 8, right below Tony Hawk 2, and right above Resident Evil 1. Kyle would hate us for doing that.
Kyle would not like this game.
No. And he would just be mad that we put it above Resident Evil 1.
I will say, when I picked this, I had no idea it would enter the top 10. I will say that.
Yeah. You just gave me the name of the game. And I'm like, oh, well, I don't know what this could be. That's a weird name for a game. So it's a pleasant surprise for sure.
Yeah, I was kind of looking through shoot 'em ups because that's what I was leaning towards for this pick. And there was a few other ones I was going to pick, but then I saw the art style of this and I'm like, that looks interesting. So that's why I picked it. But yeah, good game.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us. Thank you so much for watching or listening. If you enjoyed this, please remember to like and subscribe, as well as give us a rating on podcast services. We'll see you next week.